Chinese tourists or spies? That's what lawmakers are trying to find out after one group tried to breach a military base in Alaska. Reports saying a car blew past the security checkpoint of an Alaskan military base. The Chinese people in the vehicle saying they were tourists that got lost. An Alaska senator calling it another wake-up call, adding that we're in a new era of authoritarian aggression led by dictators in China and Russia. This comes after the spy balloon entered the U.S. from Alaska. What do you think about these developments? Let us know below and subscribe if you haven't already.
This program is brought to you by Preserve Gold, the #1 precious metals IRA provider. Call 855-962-3322.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Are Chinese spies trying to breach military bases in Alaska? A U.S. lawmaker is asking for more details about an alleged security breach. Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan releasing a statement on Wednesday, calling new reports of suspected Chinese spies there another wake-up call that we're in a new era of authoritarian aggression led by dictators in China and Russia. His comment comes after a report by USA Today. Citing unnamed soldiers, the report said a vehicle with Chinese people blew past the security checkpoint of a military installation in Alaska. Soldiers stopped the vehicle and found a drone inside. The Chinese people in the vehicle alleged they were tourists that got lost. NTD reached out to the Pentagon to confirm the incident. Defense Department spokesperson Sue Goth responded, saying in an email that the possibility of intrusion or surveillance against our facilities is always a concern, and that they work with local, state, and federal law enforcement officials, plus allies and partners to protect U.S. military bases. She noted that they also employ a wide range of protective measures to ensure safety, something she called a top priority for Secretary Austin and Deputy Secretary Hicks. Alaska is critical for defending the U.S. Less than 3 miles from Russia at its westernmost point, the state has stationed radars and missiles to defend nuclear threats from Russia, China, and North Korea. Alaska is also home to 3 large military bases, 1 in Anchorage and 2 near Fairbanks. It also has the U.S. Air Force's most advanced fighter jets, F-22s and F-35s. In 2019, a Chinese student was sentenced to a year behind bars for taking photos at a military airbase in Florida. The student, Zhao Qinli, was 20 years old. His lawyer said he was a tourist that got lost, but Zhao's camera and cell phone only had photos about the military base. A nearly $14 million Pentagon grant funded by taxpayers awarded to a U.S. university for missile research. But the school's advanced military technology program is being conducted alongside an institute with ties to the Chinese military. Let's take a closer look.
A hypersonic weapon research program and a Chinese military-linked institute sharing the same campus at a small university in New York. But there's more. On Wednesday, the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party revealed the Alfred University, which received a nearly $14 million research grant from the Pentagon, is also hosting a Confucius Institute and partnering with a Chinese university. And what might be an even bigger danger? The Institute's potential to bring sensitive U.S. military research right into the hands of the Chinese military. American Enterprise Institute's senior fellow, Derek Scissors, says scrutiny loopholes in such programs could lead to terrible outcomes in America.
This is a much smaller amount of money, but it's a much smaller amount of money that could go exactly where we don't want it to go.
The Pentagon contract, Alfred's Confucius Institute, and the university's partnership with a Chinese military-linked university are at the center of the controversy. The House panel's chairman, Mike Gallagher, sent letters about the issues to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and the president of Alfred University. Each letter requests them to address the panel's concerns about research security. It also questions how Alfred continues to get Pentagon funding while it harbors a Confucius Institute. Confucius Institutes are funded by Beijing and touted as cultural exchanges, but they're known to push Chinese state propaganda on college campuses. They're also central to helping the regime steal technology and research from the U.S. Last year, investigations found more than 150 scientists from the U.S.'s top nuclear laboratory had been hired by China to conduct research for the regime. Because of this, starting in October, all universities that continue to host Confucius Institutes will be banned from receiving money from the Pentagon. That's unless they obtain a special waiver.
The CEOs of some of America's biggest companies were in China this week, checking the pulse of one of their top markets. Among the biggest names in town, Tesla and Twitter leader Elon Musk, JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, and Starbucks Laxman Narasimhan. They followed earlier visits by Apple's Tim Cook, Pfizer's Albert Bourla, General Motors' Mary Barra, and leaders from other global companies. The string of visits highlights the importance of the Chinese market, though right now, uncertainties are hanging around the business environment in China. Beijing's recent clampdown has sent chills through the American businesses operating in China. The regime also recently raided two American firms, Capvision and Mintz. Another U.S. consulting giant, Bain & Company, said Chinese police questioned staff at its Shanghai office. But Tesla CEO Elon Musk received a warm welcome in China. The country's foreign minister Qin Gan says China aims to create a better environment for companies like Tesla. The uncertainty is leaving Western companies up in the air. In a British Chamber survey last month, 70% of businesses said they were adopting a wait-and-see approach on decisions to invest long-term in the country. In some cases, though, businesses are boosting their investments. Last month, Tesla announced a second factory in Shanghai dedicated to the production of large-scale batteries. On top of these, the outlook for investment in China remains uncertain. The country saw a deeper contraction in manufacturing activity in May. The trend may signal a loss of momentum in post-pandemic recovery. Beijing is lashing out over a new trade deal between the U.S. and Taiwan. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said Friday that China firmly deplores any official exchanges between countries that have diplomatic relations with Taiwan, which it described as a province of China. Beijing claims Taiwan is part of mainland Chinese territory, though the Chinese Communist Party has never ruled the island. The Foreign Ministry's remarks come one day after the deal signing. Taiwan and the U.S. started talks last August under what's called the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on 21st Century Trade. That's after Washington excluded Taiwan from its larger Asia trade initiative, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. Last month, the two sides reached agreement on the first part of their trade initiative. It covers customs and border procedures, regulatory practices, and small business. The pact is expected to open the island to more U.S. exports and boost Taiwan's ability to fend off economic coercion from China. According to the U.S. Trade Representative's office, future negotiations will address more complicated trade areas, including agriculture, digital trade, labor environmental standards, state-owned enterprises, and non-market policies and practices. More money moving out of China. Canada's second-largest pension fund, CDPQ, has stopped making private deals in China. It's also set to close its Shanghai office this year. That's according to the Financial Times. CDPQ is a global investment group worth $295 billion. The decision follows a parliamentary hearing in May where several Canadian pensions were asked about their relationship with China. That's as political tensions between the two countries rise. Despite the news, the fund hasn't cut off China entirely. A report noting the group says it paused private investments for some time already and have focused on liquid markets, which is the majority of its 2% total portfolio exposure to China, adding it expects this trend to continue. CDPQ confirmed the Shanghai office closure later this year, but declined to comment further. The fund is following in the footsteps of other large investors in scaling back their activity in the world's second-largest economy. And Hong Kong tycoon Li Ka-shing also recently reduced his stake in a Chinese bank, cashing out the equivalent of over $15 million. His move sending jitters through the market. A U.S.-based political and economic analyst saying Sir Li Ka-shing's investment activities have been regarded as a trendsetter in the investment world, adding he invested more in mainland China during its rapid economic development. Then, when there was some political instability, he withdrew from the mainland and sold some of his property investments to invest more in overseas markets. Blood-soaked banners, towels, and newspaper clippings. A museum is highlighting artifacts Beijing doesn't want you to see. A memorial museum opening in the Big Apple kicking off Friday, featuring memorabilia from China's Tiananmen Square massacre. Here are the details.
The reason why this memorial exhibition is here because the Hong Kong June 4th Museum was forcibly closed by the Chinese Communist Party in September 2021. The CCP's intention is very clear: to cover up history and make the world forget the crimes they committed.
The exhibition features a range of memorabilia from the protests and the massacre. Bloody towels, blood-soaked banners, newspaper clippings, letters, and even a tent used by students during their 7-week rally.
Every item here has a story behind it because the Chinese government wants to erase the memory completely. Anyone who has kept such item is at risk.
The museum is the only place in the U.S. where people can physically see the artifacts from the events 34 years ago. Former student leader of the protests, Zhou Fengsua, hopes the artifacts will now be safe in New York, away from the direct authority of the Chinese Communist Party.
This, for us, is tremendous. It's our sanctuary. It's our home base. It's a place we can commemorate these who died and remember the fight of freedom for millions of people.
Public commemorations of the Tiananmen Square massacre are strictly prohibited in China. Earlier this year, authorities in Hong Kong jailed 3 leaders of a group that had organized vigils commemorating the massacre.
From esteemed judge to enemy of the state, a Chinese legal practitioner gave up his career to uphold justice. We sat down with Zhong Jinhua, a former judge for eastern China's Zhejiang province, to learn more about his story.
Zhong Jinhua became a thorn in Beijing's side after making the following statement in 2012.
I said that after the 18th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party this year, if Beijing didn't lift the ban on political and speech freedom, I would be the first to announce my withdrawal from the CCP. Then I will form an opposition party to overthrow its dictatorship.
Zhong's words put him under immediate threat and surveillance by the regime. At the time, the former judge had left the bench to practice law for 4 years. His decision triggered by the lack of judicial independence in communist China. Zhong was later embroiled in a nationwide police operation against human rights defenders. Hundreds of lawyers and activists were detained on July 9, 2015.
The police broke into the lawyers' homes at night and took them away, without showing any identification or search warrants. I told the authorities that if they did the same in my house, I would act in self-defense.
The day Zhong posted this content on social media, police surrounded his home. He was threatened with arrest. Mindful of his family's safety, he began planning a trip to the United States, a brief getaway from the repression in China.
Days before we left, a police chief in Shanghai called and asked, "Are you going to the United States on August the 11th? He told me in a threatening tone that there would be a good chance I wouldn't get out of the country.
Despite the intimidation, Zhong brought his family to the airport. A group of police blocked them and forced Zhong to undergo a strip and body search.
That was infuriating. They stripped me down and went through all my luggage, my pockets, and even every picture in my phone. They spoke to me as if I were a criminal.
The family were eventually let go half an hour before boarding. But Zhong said he didn't expect that level of humiliation after a decade as a judge. Upon arrival in the U.S., Zhong officially announced that he quit the CCP, joining over 400 million other Chinese people worldwide who've done the same.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what's coming up in our second half. $800 billion. That's how much U.S. investment has flowed into China in recent years. The staggering number coming from a new report. Plus, how should we ensure that Americans aren't unwittingly backing China's military through U.S. retirement funds? We spoke to the report's author, Derek Scissors, for details. He's the senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and the chief economist of the China Beige Book. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.